the next installation of Innovation at the Edge into the Metaverse. We have an interesting group of people in panel today, and as people filter in, I think we're up to almost 70 people. I want to introduce you to Greg Horowitt. He is the Director of Innovation Design here at UC San Diego in the Office of Innovation and Commercialization. And he's a mastermind out of all the things that we typically do. So he keeps me pretty busy. So welcome, Greg, and I invite you to take it away.
Thanks, Gwen. Just want to check if Paul's joined us yet. Has he been able to log on? Do you see?
I don't see him right now.
So we'll give it just a moment. We're hoping that our Associate Vice Chancellor for Innovation and Commercialization can welcome you, tell you a little bit about some of the exciting things we have, and then we'll kind of launch into the conversation, which is the reason you are here today, based on the number of people who have kind of registered for this event. We're going to let the counter, we have a little counter at the bottom. We're going to kind of let it get up to kind of more of the numbers. Yeah, but this topic has been one that we've had a fairly good response to. In fact, we've had more response to this particular topic than our previous ones. We've been off for the summer, so we're excited to get back into these conversations. And the reason we host these conversations is because particularly we had this idea during COVID and the pandemic that we would use this opportunity not only to reach out to the community and reach out to stakeholders in the ecosystem, but also people from all around the world who had interest in some of the topics. We would convene conversations about things that were important to the university, the community, and the world at large, but in a way that we could listen to feedback, some of the wisdom and insights, so that we might think about how we can do a better job, how we can lean further into a lot of these opportunities that are in front of us, and how we could improve kind of what we do, both at the Office of Innovation, UCSD, but also within the community. I don't know if we're still waiting for Paul.
I've been here.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, hello. You are there. Okay.
We can officially begin. So we've got
you can officially begin anyways, but hello.
Our Associate Vice Chancellor of Innovation, Paul Roban. We would like for him to welcome you and tell you a little bit about what we do at both the UCSD and the OIC. Paul?
Cool. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, just welcome to everybody. I don't see the numbers, but I heard there was a lot of people registered for this. So this is obviously a very popular topic. This is part of the Innovation at the Edge series, which is where we have conversations with the community about trends and tools and human factors that really help us to build a better future for all of us. So, you know, we get a lot out of these conversations. We learn a lot from the conversation itself and from the follow-up. And I really hope that everybody in the community gets value out of us hosting these conversations as well. And to that end, I would highly encourage anybody who has ideas for topics or areas that we should be focusing on to please get in touch with either Greg or myself, and we will see if we can put other events around those topics as well. This particular topic, of course, the metaverse and the tools that underpin it is just going to be increasingly important as time goes on for all sorts of different reasons, prototyping and creating testing environments and showcasing and communications and a host of other reasons. And the people that are on this panel, they really represent a breadth of applications for these tools. You know, these people are not waiting for the future to arrive. These people are actually building the future. And, you know, we really need to pay attention. So I hope that, you know, in this stimulating conversation that it'll stimulate people in the audience to really imagine other applications for all of these tools, and perhaps even to partner with the university in developing those tools as well. So I'll just finish by saying thank you to everybody for joining us. Particular thank you to the panel. We're really, really delighted to have you guys. And of course to Greg and the team for putting this all together. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. So with that, Greg, back to you.
Paul, can you just quickly tell them a little bit about the Design and Innovation Building, just so we can...
Oh, you want me to do more? Okay.
Yeah.
So the Design and Innovation Building is going to be opening up in November. It is a partnership with the community to accelerate the development of innovators, entrepreneurs, and the ideas that they have to better our society. So there's going to be space literally for our community to actually be physically present with all of our smart students and our faculty. We are inviting investors and entrepreneurs and accelerators and incubators and everybody who is part of really of this innovation economy to join us in this building as a kind of a portal to all the talent and ideas that are across the campus. It's going to be opening in November, but we are activating the building right now, and I'd love to show any of you around. Anybody has any interest in engaging with us in innovation and entrepreneurship, I would be very happy to show you around and sort of give you the bigger vision for what we're doing here. And I think that's about it. Anything else, Greg?
Nope, that is it. So again, we welcome you. It'll be this portal to the community, and actually several of the topics we're going to be discussing over the next several innovation at the edge have to do with things that these are tools that we are bringing into the campus in a proactive way. And we want to share with you kind of some of the stuff we're doing, but also invite you to suggest how we may better utilize some of these tools and invite you to kind of engage, participate as much as you can. For those of us who aren't, or those of you listening who aren't physically here and aren't, Trisha will talk to you a little bit, and Patrick, about how we're kind of dealing with that as well through some of these metaverse tools. So thanks, Paul. And at this point, we'll kind of kick it off. I'll introduce myself and the panelists very, very quickly so we can really spend most of the time on the conversation itself. As Gwen had mentioned, I'm the Director of Innovation Design at UCSD, but my background is as a serial entrepreneur, venture capital investor, author, all kinds of stuff. I do a lot of advisory work, but particularly on innovation systems, and how they relate to kind of creating startups. Patrick, who is my co-host for this conversation, and Patrick is the Assistant Director of the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination. He'll tell you a bit about what they do. He's a wonderful collaborator, and we couldn't do not only this conversation, but some of the projects that we have in mind and we've already launched, we couldn't do without him, his team, and the support that they've shown us. Trisha is a person who is I've known for several years. She's going to take us into the metaverse. She's very proactive. She comes out of things like esports and game design, but primarily she built synthetic worlds, and she gives us a place to live in these alternative realities and experiment with the world in new and different ways. Steve, out of UCSD Nano Engineering, he's a futurist, and he created a very exciting company that blends visual arts and nano engineering together and uses technology in a unique and novel way to solve some very important problems. Catherine, a co-founder, I'm sorry, hopefully I didn't miss, no, I skipped over Alex. Alex Howland, President CEO, President co-founder of Virbela. Alex was at UCSD, and you can probably read his bio quicker than I can. But he started Virbela while he was at UCSD, grew it, and the company had gained so much traction and interest. It was acquired and now is one of the leading platforms for virtual engagement and investment events. He'll talk a little bit more about that. Catherine is a co-founder and CTO of OurWorlds. And we often think of the metaverses as places where we can entertain ourselves and do things in our downtime, or in these highly commercial applications. She and Kilma are going to talk to us about how we can go well beyond that and use it to kind of shape and better understand and honor culture, and how we can bring that culture forward into new ways of engagement. And so her background, as you can see on here, is as an educator, And she has this passion for STEM and how it kind of leads to cultural preservation and using XR for what they're doing. And of course, Kilma, the best for last. Kilma's, as we were saying earlier, he's the only one who has an Emmy Award in his picture. So we kind of all bow down to Kilma, and he's the executive producer in technology for OurWorlds. And so he and Catherine will be talking to more of these cultural applications of this. So with that said, we're going to bring up these save the dates at the end, but our next conversation that we're going to be doing for Innovation at the Edge will be in December, and it'll be on space. And then there's some other programs here, but for right now, we're going to jump right into the conversation. But I realize that before we can adequately jump into a meaningful conversation on this, we have to do some kind of definition setting and alignment on kind of what we're doing. And we've heard the term metaverse, we hear the term polyverse, we hear the term multiverse, we hear synthetic worlds, and we're not really often sure what they are. In addition to that, the tools that we use to build these things are things like XR, AR, VR, all these acronyms. So I thought we'd start by talking to Patrick and Trisha a little bit and help us kind of do some context setting around what exactly are these tools, where do they kind of come from, and how do you see us really kind of using these tools for creation beyond entertainment? Patrick, I'll kind of turn it over to you first.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. It's really great to be here and to be on a panel with such an amazing group of inspiring innovators and inspiring imaginations for how we can use these XR tools to begin to build what we're calling the metaverse these days, and do some good in the process. For me, kind of stepping back and thinking a little bit definitionally at the beginning here, one of the things that I think is why this is the right time to be having this conversation is there isn't a ton of agreement about what the metaverse will be. It's still an emergent thing. But the word metaverse we get from the science fiction writer Neal Stephenson's book Snow Crash from, I think, 1992. And being the assistant director of the Arthur C. Clarke Center, we're a place where we draw a lot of inspiration from science fiction. And so this invention of science fiction, an imagined world in which kind of immersive next generation of the internet is where everyone is working, playing, experiencing culture, enjoying entertainment, etc., has become a bit of a roadmap for the people who are actually building these things and building what will be the metaverse for all of us. And these are ideas that were not exclusive to Neal Stephenson. William Gibson was another. And then, of course, our UCSD favorite, Vernor Vinge, who is an alum of UCSD, who wrote the just fantastic Rainbow's End, which is set on the UCSD campus and imagines a very plausible near future scenario in which the metaverse is an everyday experience for all of us, and how that shapes our behavior, our education systems, our geopolitical systems, etc. And so I just find it's a little useful to kind of step back and look at where this term, the metaverse, comes from, because these stories are kind of how we understand the metaverse as it's being built underneath our feet. I think Ready Player One is the other example that everyone is pretty familiar with. But one of the things that a lot of these stories have in common is that they're quite dystopian, that these technologies are not exactly in the service of human thriving, or they're at least very complicated. And the reality that we're building is inspired by these stories. But what I find is really exciting now is if we can think of the metaverse as sort of the next generation of the internet, a more immersive, embodied version of the internet, we have an opportunity to imagine some changes to the development of it that if we had a time machine and could go back, we might be able to avoid some of the pitfalls that have come along with the World Wide Web. And so, like I said, everyone on this panel, I think, is doing really amazing work to kind of shift the conversation and shift the development of the metaverse in really unique and important ways. But I wanted to hand it off to Trisha Williams, who's one of them, who's kind of been really pioneering some new approaches to add a little bit more definition to how we define the metaverse.
Sure, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I think that I've been hearing that term, used very often in just general conversation a lot. And I feel like a true definition of the word metaverse, we haven't really achieved yet. And Patrick, you sort of said that we're working towards it. People go like, Fortnite is the metaverse. Fortnite is a game. And the true definition of metaverse is taking all of these different virtual worlds, these different platforms, these different apps, these different games, and connecting them to a seamless transition and navigation and ecosystem between them all. And that's what's currently being built. Like, the big names are doing it, Microsoft's doing it, Google's doing it, Unreal is doing it, but also a bunch of independent companies and everything are still trying to get that connection and navigation between each other. And once you can jump into VR and be your VR self, and then project that VR avatar in augmented reality into your friend's living room, and then go play Fortnite together. Like, that's really what that true metaverse is. So everything that we're talking about right now is building towards that eventual raw definition of metaverse. And one thing that Greg had brought up is metaverse and multiverse get kind of intermixed a lot. And just to give a definition separation there, metaverse is what I just described. The multiverse is what you see in lots of like sci-fi movies and stuff, is the idea that there are many different realities that aren't connected, but you can jump between them. Like if you had made a different decision, you fractured your reality. So those are the two definitions there.
And Trisha, can you also, Trisha and Patrick, can you help us understand, in addition to, of course, the metaverse kind of conversations, those things about the tools we're using, AR, VR, XR, mixed reality, even that kind of spins my head.
Yeah, be happy to. So virtual reality is an all-encompassing, immersive, takes over your brain. When you put on that headset, you do not see the world around you. All you see is what is rendered within that virtual world around you. It is to scale. You can interact with things using your fingers, using a controller, but it really is fully immersive. Augmented reality is the best way I guess I can describe it, is sort of an overlay on reality. Pokemon Go is one of the biggest examples that we have of that. You've all seen those kids walking around the park, like holding up their phone and finding Pikachu. And Pikachu obviously isn't there, but through their phone, they're seeing that and they're interacting with that. That is augmented reality, AR. And like Google Glass is augmented reality, or like Iron Man's helmet is augmented reality. And then you get into XR or MR, mixed reality, is sort of like the next step in everything there. Mixed reality is that augmented reality overlaid on life, but you can interact with it. So you can reach out and you like can pick up that Pokemon and turn it around. And that interaction is really what separates augmented reality from mixed reality. Mixed reality hardware right now, HoloLens is kind of like the most popular one out there, Lenovo, things like that.
Great. Patrick, do you have anything to add to that, or anything you wanted to elucidate?
No, I as usual, Trisha covers all the bases.
Absolutely. So a lot of the applications that we've seen, or that are in the kind of forward consciousness of most people, is in the entertainment field. As you mentioned, Pokemon Go and a lot of these more commercial applications. But where we wanted to actually shift the conversation just for a moment is to some of the kind of business applications. This is not just for entertainment and fun. It's there's some serious aspects to how we use these technologies. And so I'd love to be able to turn it over to Steve and Alex next. And Steve, why don't you start about what you guys are doing and really kind of how you thought about this? I mean, where did you get the inspiration for this? And really, how are you using this to solve a really important problem?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, so generally, I'd say this all began. I was a UCSD nanoengineering student and really wanted to get hands-on with my molecules. Yeah, I tried VR in like 1997, technically at like Six Flags, and like kind of knew that that existed, but obviously it wasn't mainstream when I was at UCSD. And really just had to create our own science first, our own metaverse specifically geared towards science and the nanoscale. And if I could actually just share a little GIF here. Yeah, so our mission is to advance humanity with more scientific breakthroughs. And we think that, enabling them with more immersive technology like virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, doesn't really matter what headset you have, but it's all about getting hands-on and getting in there with, as you can see here, these are different chemical and protein structures. So, really it's a tool that could be utilized by people in drug development, making new medicine, people making synthetic biology. A lot of people have been looking at that field. Even things like material science and sort of clean energy there. So yeah, just really trying to change the world in all the ways we can and help out all the people that this immersive tech is relevant to by building our own world.
What does this allow us to do that we couldn't do before? Is this a must-have or just kind of a nice-to-have?
Yeah, this whole industry has actually been exploring VR since its inception. 50, 60 years ago, people were trying to get a better view of molecule to ever, understand protein structures and understand how these things work. So we're currently in this world where we have, tons of data. We have AlphaFold. We can predict protein structures. We just have, thousands and thousands, millions of these structures available. And you need that human insight, that human ingenuity to really make that breakthrough. The machines can't do everything on their own. They can do a bunch and they can give that info to the user, but you really need the humans kind of driving that. And the way we see it is this is like the ultimate interface to allow humans to interact with all this complex molecular data. So, could you do these things in a slow way that takes many years while a bunch of people die of horrible diseases? Yeah. Can you speed all of that up by connecting people and letting them access their data and really getting hands-on? Yeah, I think it's a need to have.
I agree. And one of the things that I always found interesting is that there's no longer the tyranny of distance, the fact that we aren't together, that we're distributed, that we can both be in the same environment, but see exactly the same thing at the same perspective, as opposed to relying on words and our interpretation of those words to help us imagine what's actually there or not there. Oscar asked the question, does this relate to biometrical ID?
You could do cool things with biometrics. Logging in to VR with an eye scan, it sounds sci-fi, but, we log into our phones with either a finger scan or like a face scan. What we do with, biosimulation and molecular drug development, not too related to biometrics, but I do think that biometrics offer a more personalized entry into virtual worlds and can probably stay with you persistently across multiple experiences. So it's probably a necessary part of the metaverse.
Excellent. Alex, you're using this platform for a very, very different types of application. Can you talk a little bit about what that Virbela is doing for the business world?
Sure, yep, absolutely. Thanks, Greg. We're creating virtual worlds and virtual reality platforms for events, for education, and to actually go to work, to replace the brick and mortar office and have fully virtual headquarters in a virtual world. I can share my screen here as well. Just gives you a quick sense of what the virtual worlds look like, and a little sense of where we've come from and where we're going. So as Greg mentioned, started at UCSD back with some grant funding from GMAC, the owner of the GMAT exam, back in 2012. Eventually actually spun out between Office of Innovation and Research, went to the private sector, where eventually we got actually acquired by one of our biggest customers. Our customer, eXp Realty, is a real estate company that runs their entire brokerage in a virtual world. They have no physical headquarters. They joined us in 2016. There were 1,000 agents. 5 years later, there's 65,000 agents over 18 different countries, are uplisted to the NASDAQ and trade over $7 billion a year, $7 billion market cap. So to give you a sense that real business can happen today, in these virtual worlds, whether you're in a headset, whether you're at your PC or on your mobile device, they're showing the benefits of kind of the in-office feel, but at the price of having a virtual office, a lot cheaper.
Amazing. One of the questions, I guess we'll take it now, but it actually would be one that we're going to deal with in a few moments. But Ryan asked the question, if when further and fully developed, let's say some point in the future, what would it mean for our reality if people turn to the metaverse as a means of escape, which was kind of the point of Ready Player One? Trisha.
Yeah, it's kind of like our lives during the pandemic, right? I was in VR playing a lot of games, connecting with people I couldn't see in real life. That's like, it's here.
Absolutely. And for me, what was so strange is that actually connecting with all these people and having conversations with these people, when I finally did get around to seeing them, it was kind of great to see them, but I didn't feel like I hadn't seen them for a year. I didn't kind of have that same feeling something very familiar, like they had been there.
Yeah, and blending that, right? So how do you get the benefits of being in a social place, but also have the benefits from work from anywhere, live from wherever? It gives you some of the best of both worlds.
Anything to add, Trisha?
What I'm seeing, people, it's amazing how many people that I wasn't even aware that I hadn't met in real life over these last 2 years since COVID, because we've been working in VR all the time. A lot of people are in there that we met. And just last Monday, there was an event going on at UCSD, and I walked in and I saw like 3 people that I felt like I had known for 2 years and realized I had never been in the same physical space with them. And that was really kind of like a, oh my gosh, moment in my own head. Like, I can hug you for real. It's not a virtual hug at this point.
Fantastic. And we're getting some great questions being asked, but what I'd love to do is go to Kilma and Catherine to talk about their application. Because what's exciting about this world of the metaverse, as we're kind of generically calling it right now, is it's not just for entertainment. It is just not for commercial applications. It can do so much more. And it has the ability to change the way humans as a collective interact, the way we connect to both our past and the future. And I'd love to chat a bit with Catherine and Kilma to tell us a little bit what OurWorlds is as a platform, what your hope for it really is, and kind of where you're going to be going with it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And what an honor to be on this panel with all of you who are leading the way. I want to go back for a second and talk about the metaverse. I see it more like what Einstein and McCloskey were talking about when they talked about relation to space and time and the continuum between the two. I think that OurWorlds, we're using emerging technologies to build these authentic primary source stories and experiences that once existed, currently exist, or might exist in the future. And the XR360 orbits that we're building are electronic portals that help us to digitally transcend the space-time continuum, as well as build digital pathways between our imagination and reality. And this new reality, the extended reality that we're building in these 360 orbits, is a digitalization really of space-time using digital constructs rather than physical constructs. So that's a little bit more how I see the metaverse. And when we talk about Ready Player One, I think that's too dystopian. I think this full immersion VR really is not the direction that things are headed, just because that experience, for us, it's good in limited applications, like for training or quick social interactions or maybe entertainment, but the prolonged widespread use of VR is something that we find in focus groups and with our human subjects is just a little too disorienting, and people get nauseous and they lose their sense of perception. And we just think that maybe there's some problems with this full-scale VR dystopian reality where the real world falls apart. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of lean in on some of the stuff that was talked about a little bit earlier, just to show kind of, our sense of this metaverse is something maybe that's a little less fully immersive and a little more interactive as you go about your daily life into the real world. And you go about your daily life and you enjoy this big, beautiful planet with all the beautiful people and our friends and our families. that we use augmented reality and virtual reality and extended reality to enhance and complement these human experiences that we have. So that's, OurWorlds is, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute, but we're kind of intentionally avoiding the full immersion VR for that reason. So I just wanted to weigh in a little bit on what was happening a little earlier in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, if I could add to that just a little bit, yeah, it's very interesting thinking about how this project has evolved. I mean, obviously we sort of evolved it together, but the origin stories of every one of the metaverses that you are all building. I mean, there's a needs case for all of those, and I guess getting back to what that was is a very interesting story. I mean, in our case, really, it was just to try to find a way to preserve a very cool cultural event that we attended. At a reservation. I mean, Kilma had developed this app, and it was based on a tribal hand game, and it was a great app. I was very curious about the actual game. We drove out to a reservation together, like an hour in the dark, and just like we get out, and it's just like these little dots of fire in the horizon, smoke, and like the sound of chanting and laughing, and it was just magical. And it's just like right then, almost, that you can imagine that being the metaverse, and that almost like the vision for what we're doing now was almost fully formed at that moment. So it's just kind of like, how do you preserve this? This is amazing, and like, it's not going to be advertised. It's just sort of word of mouth. Like there be square kind of thing, and so you really wonder, like, is this all going to be lost one day? If you were going to try to capture it, how would you do it? So that really, those are the kinds of questions that really kind of guided the development of what we're doing. And then of course you find all these other reasons why it's great. Like, it preserves culture and there's education and all those things. But really, I think at its very core, it was just like, wow, how can we do this? How can we preserve what it means to, just have experienced something very, very special?
So I guess the short answer to your question is, OurWorlds really is a platform that's pushing beyond the traditional limits of communication medium. I think that our hands are tied with television and radio and print. I think that extended reality and 360 is a way to push beyond the traditional limits of communication medium. And so we really found that these emerging tools that we're using and deploying are a very comprehensive way to tell stories and narratives that are well beyond traditional communication mediums. And so, we're really capturing things volumetrically and in 360 orbits. I mean, it's the difference really almost between flying a helicopter and a plane. I do both. In helicopters, you have to think in 360. You have to think about what's behind you, what's down, what's up, what's side to side. So when we build these XR 360 portals or these orbits that we're building, we're really looking at things in a full-blown 360 world, in a sense.
Yeah, it's this environment.
So yeah, and they're meant to be geolocated out in the world so that you can interact with them. If you're at La Jolla Cove, you're at a park, you mentioned Pokemon Go, you go down to La Jolla Shores or the Cove and, you're there, but you also can pop open our platform and also experience some Native American culture that may have existed there at some point in time or may exist in the future, because we're still here. We're not living in the history books. We're still creating and doing things now. And so that's what we want to show.
If I can just add in a little here too.
Please.
I think it's a really good question, and I think it's something that we should be mindful of, how these technologies are used. But also, I mean, going back to like the novel, when the novel became a popular pastime, reading novels, there was a ton of panic about, people are escaping reality. They're just going to lie around in their boudoirs and read novels all day, and they'll disconnect from the world. And that didn't come to pass. And I think there's a similar, maybe sometimes like fear or anxiety. But to Kilma and Catherine's point, I've had profound experiences on everyone here's platforms, but in using, OurWorlds, I think it's a really good example of how extended reality is still an extension of reality. It's connected to the real world. And there's, a place where I go get pizza probably once a month. And because of the OurWorlds app and exploring it, I discovered, a sculpture by a Native American artist named Johnny Bear Contreras that was, 100 yards away that I never knew about, and got to go, find that sculpture and hear the voice of the artist, see the artist. So it was like literally augmenting my reality in a really tangible way. That was really rewarding.
That is really interesting. Kilma, did you have something more to add, or Catherine?
I mean, yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Patrick. And I'm really glad that you, found some value in it. And I mean, really, the 360 technology has been around for a long time. I mean, everyone uses it more or less on a daily basis. Just the photos from Google Maps, you just go and you can just see, but those are photos, they're not videos. So there's this fantastic story by, Borges, Funes de Memorias. I don't know if anyone's ever read it, but it's fantastic. It's this man who, he falls off a horse, he is paraplegic, he can never walk again, can't even get up from bed. But then it's replaced by this like almost monstrous ability to go back in time to every single memory he's ever had, and even just like dive really deep into places that he didn't actually really even look. Like if he went into a library that he knew as a child, he could go in and like read all the books, like that kind of level of detail. And I mean, just imagine, what that would mean. I mean, is that even possible? So just like the idea of being able to capture something in 360 of the sky, the earth, I mean, it's something that I think is very compelling in terms of, what you capture and how you capture.
Well, this conversation has certainly yielded. We've got a number of people who have given us questions to take a look at. The first one I'll just ask you from Matthew, and this is for everyone on the panel to kind of jump in. A virtual world is not necessarily constrained by physical laws. How do you think this can change our relationship to travel, commuting, etc.? Does the metaverse need to create a simulated physical space that makes physical sense? So does it have to truly mirror reality?
Or a lot of questions.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of questions packed in there that brought up a lot of things, certainly for me. I think what space that is familiar helps do is help people get connected and understand how to navigate very quickly. It's hard enough going into a new medium, but going to a new medium with a place that's completely unknown is harder to kind of get used to. So for purposes of comfort and ease of use, we often at least start with areas that are pretty representative of physical spaces. But you also have the opportunity to go to places or fictional things that aren't possible to go into the real world. So I think the blend of those is important. We also find the social dynamics really matter by the space as well. We can take 20 people and put them into a large virtual auditorium and get very little participation. We take those same 20 people, we put them around a 20-person virtual boardroom, and all of a sudden you have a lot more social interaction happening between the folks. We have people who go to work 40 hours a week in our virtual environments. We had some rooms without windows and that were too dark, and we added windows and brightened them up, and literally had employees, messaging us like, "You changed my life. I go to work every day here, and you just literally brightened up my world." So those things I think really matter and takes lots of kind of consideration. I think we're just scratching the surface.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, on the travel part of it, and this is something I'll speak about in a minute here, but one of the things that happens in a lot of these virtual worlds, if you think about navigating web pages, you navigate web pages by like clicking this thing, and then it takes you to this new area, this new space. When you're in this, you're completely immersed, or even in an AR world, that's really jarring to just like click on a word and then pop, you're in this new world. So one of the things that we started with our company, we actually call ourselves a virtual reality travel company, because we try to simulate that idea of travel, especially because I had a different company before COVID hit, but when COVID hit, we all couldn't travel, and we all realized how much we missed that. That's how we saw each other. So we ended up simulating the idea of travel time in virtual space, which doesn't have to be there. You can immediately go from one world to another, but we started creating airships, because we all hate airplanes, but we all love airships. So the idea of getting onto an airship and having 10 minutes of travel time in a space where you can communicate, stop, talk to a person, walk around, look at the sights before you get to that next zone, that next world, was really, really successful. And it sort of satisfied that little travel need within a virtual world that could be instantaneous. So there are some things that I think is really powerful to try to recreate from real life. Yet at the same time, exactly like Alex said, there's no reason that you can't travel to a different planet or out to space or underwater or something like that. You can change the environments to be fantastical, but the travel time to get there and the connection that we get between them is what's very important.
So building on that, Trisha, could you talk a little bit about Origami Air and about what you guys are doing to build these experiences that go beyond just building physical space? You're actually building entire experiences.
Sure. Yeah, I'll share my screen. There's so many amazing questions. I want to like jump on all of them, and
I know,
and I'll go through my little practice spiel here. So, can you see my screen?
We can see it.
We can see the screen. Okay, wonderful. So we are on a platform. There's a Microsoft platform actually called AltSpace. It's part of Microsoft Mesh, which is something that they're doing to try to make that whole, true definition of metaverse go be achieved. Right now, it's fully virtual reality, although you can be on PC, and Microsoft, it's optimized, and Apple, it's optimized for VR. So 3 out of our 4 founders came from video games. They came from video games. So we're very used to building these massive, massive worlds on other people's platforms, other people's text. And we thought a while ago, I stopped making video games and we started taking the world building behind massive online worlds and bringing them into communities and going, can we bring people, representatives from communities to use that same process and imagine a better future for themselves and for their community? And we did that for several years up at USC. We did it for Sundance. We did it through the Kaufman Institute, which is where I met Greg. And then when COVID hit, we can no longer do that in person. So we thought, well, we have these virtual skills. Could we do this inside of virtual reality? So what you're seeing on the screen right there is our first sort of grand experiment to see, could we do that? In 2020, we gathered 10 different people from around the country, world actually, and had them come in to our skyport, the skyport up there where we launch our airships. And we said that we're going to, over 8 weeks, we're going to settle a virtual world. And every week they came in, they went up on the airship, they went out there, they picked which land, we had some virtual land for them to settle. And then every week they'd come together and they'd talk about what they wanted their future to be. If they had 4 blocks of virtual land or of real land, what would they put there? And we put it 8 years in the future, 2028, and they named it Afterville, after all of this was happening because we were in the middle of the pandemic. And these 10 people came together every week, they didn't know each other, and they talked about their future. And they researched and they went, okay, we want nature to be like this. We want to preserve this. We want to build this. We want our energy to be like this. And they just had these wonderful ideas. And our internal team would put all those ideas down. And between those 7 days that they met each other, we would build it. So the next time they came back, they could land in a virtual reality. Remember, they're walking around it to scale. They're actually like going into that building that they imagined the week prior. They saw that river that they cleaned up. They planted new trees. And they were just, it wasn't just successful, it was practically addictive. They were there all the time coming back. And we went, this is such a new way that we can use virtual reality in full immersion. And then we got to the end of the 8 weeks, it's all we had out. We had basically granted our time as a company to do that. And what you see here is some of the things that they had made. And we went, okay, well, now what? Do we just run it again with a new group? What happens? And they went, no, we want to use this. We want to stay here. We want to live here. And out of that, things like down at the bottom here, the Greenwolf Goods you see, this is a virtual store that's paired with a real store. So they sell jewelry and they do all sorts of different printing and etchings, but they actually pair it with a digital twin that you can buy for your avatar and also get that jewelry sent to you in the mail. And that's a business that's both reflected in virtual reality and in real life. The same with the Nam bar down here, which is a virtual food. She was caterer for a long time, and now she's pairing virtual VR dining experiences to dine with people anywhere in the world, but you still get that food shipped to you so you can experience it in real life as you dine in VR. They created a community center. They did Indigenous screening. We had our first Indigenous filmmaker screening up there a couple months ago, which was very successful. So these are all these opportunities that came out of that, like actual businesses came out of that grand experiment that we did. And on the counter side of that, because we were like, okay, that's great, but we're granting our time. Can we also be a successful company and then bring money in doing the same thing? So this next slide here is, I mentioned airships several times. We thought people love, love, love the airships. We want to give our time doing world builds like Afterglow, but how do we sustain our company? And we realized that a lot of people really, really want to be in the metaverse right now, the beginning of this metaverse. So we put our airships up available to customize with companies and institutions. And these are 4 of, we've done about 8 now. And so we customize airships with these companies that use them for salons, they use them for product releases, for sales meetings, for pitches, and just like virtual headquarters and things like that. So there's so many different opportunities. If you kind of start thinking about it, approaching VR a little bit differently than just like a game or a VR travel somewhere. Like you can simulate VR travel without just going, here's a 360 video of Shanghai. That was a lot in like this much. So
that was perfect though. One of the questions that came directly related to something you said was when you use the term indigenous in the context of the setting of the virtual world, who exactly is indigenous?
That's such a great question because we've had so many conversations about that. So when I used it, when we talked about the Indigenous stage and the filmmaker, True Indigenous is a wonderful filmmaker named Justin Deegan from Standing Rock. But we've had this big conversation of if we're settling the metaverse, if this wave of people that are there, that have been there for a long time in all of these VR worlds, were the original ones that were there, does that mean that we are indigenous to this virtual world? And what does that mean for us, especially when, like I kind of showed those 2 sides, that we're working with communities, but we're also working with companies and corporations. And we put ourselves in the situation going, do we want to have Nestle come in? Do we want to have Hearst come in? And we thought, they're coming in anyway. To be that spot kind of between community and company is a tricky little area because we definitely want to protect the indigenous people that settled and pioneered this world in this reality. So how do we do that gracefully and represent everybody, especially when 2 avatars, like we've had students from Kansas City stand next to one of the founders of Cosmo in our places. They would never be in the same place together, except for they can in VR because they go to these same little areas that we had created.
Something interesting, I think, related, Trisha, that's absolutely fascinating. In the eXp Realty example, where we've seen the Asian population grow from 1,000 to 65,000, and now across 18 different countries, think of the kind of culture and the atmosphere of a 1,000-person community versus a 65,000-person community. I sometimes compare it to walking your dog in a little small town in a rural area. You're going to stop. You're going to pet the dog. You probably know the neighbor. You're going to chat for 5 minutes, and it's almost rude not to. But if you do that same interaction in New York City, you're looked at like you have 5 heads. So how do we think about the community and the culture and how it evolves when we go from kind of this small scale, small numbers to many thousands or millions?
I think that's perfect. Several of the questions that we're getting asked in the Q&A have to do with how do we still create a better world, but still be mindful of all the ethical implications of what we're doing. Everything from, almost having this God ability to create new worlds and to manifest things as we see them, to also understanding the potential negative consequences or unintended consequences and trophic cascades that naturally come from any new creation. how do we do we build that into the natural design of what we do, or do we build these things really to evolve and respond to that?
I would love to jump in if that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of what we do, our app, well, the beta is code complete. You know, we're in the process of looking for funding and figuring out ways to create more content. And where does the content come from? The content actually comes from creators and contributors. And so I think that that is a really valid way to get all of the viewpoints, you know, really a diverse set of viewpoints into the metaverse. And so what does it mean for the creator and the contributor? I mean, you have to give them the tools, right? So it's like a combination of like, we've built this world, but have we so you know, what we've actually built is sort of an interface, and it's an interface that connects past with the present and geolocation. But what you get, you know, at those geolocations can come from anyone. So, you know, the tools that we're building are creator tools. Right now it's, you know, a workflow. And so, you know, we do actually have some expert users who are able to use that workflow and you know, create, you know, for the platform. But ultimately, it should be as seamless as using TikTok or using Instagram, and just being able to be a creator and telling your story in that way. And, you know, I think that it's yeah, I mean, in terms of being able to get people to tell their stories from a, I mean, just reclaim their histories, reclaim their stories. I mean, you know, there's history, there's current events, there's so many different, you know, viewpoints. And, you know, I guess coming up with an aesthetic, coming up with a world that is going to be able to be, I don't know, replicated or you know, developed and you know, just with aesthetic input, with like, you know, storytelling input, with narrative input from, you know, very, very, you know, diverse audiences all over the world. I mean, I think that's certainly one approach you could take.
I think that's really well said. And I think that it also I think that's really well said. But I also kind of disagree with this premise that it has to be either enterprising or socially responsible. I think that it can be both. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. And I think that, you know, what Catherine said hits at the heart of that, you know, there's a space for everybody, and it can be enterprising and socially responsible. That's how we feel here.
And it pretty much should be both, because as we do intentional, either through leadership or through building of companies, we always have to be mindful about the purpose we put into our practice and what we do. And these tools might help us better understand that. Right now, the tools, you know, are a bit rudimentary. And so this is something I'd like to maybe ask Steve and maybe even Trisha on, is right now, when people go into VR, you know, the headsets can sometimes make you nauseous. They can be a bit disorienting. Where do you see the future of all this going? And the reason I mentioned Steve is because when I was at his shop a couple of weeks ago, he let me experience a brand new headset, or for me, it was a new experience headset that is kind of changing all that. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah, I think that, you know, people are going to have different levels of technology access. You know, we've been seeing this evolve. You know, CRT monitors in the 90s was pretty innovative at the time, alongside mouse and keyboard. But now we have, you know, advanced high resolution displays on 2D mode. You know, we have virtual reality. We have phone-based virtual reality, which I say is what a lot of people probably tried, and it does make a lot of people sick. You know, we have standalone consumer units. You know, a lot of video gaming with that. But I'd say, you know, trend-wise, I'm seeing a shift to, you know, productivity, collaboration apps, more things with mixed reality. Greg mentioned we have a Vario XR3 at our office. It's super high resolution, you know, mixed reality headset. So it's not just virtual, like you're trapped in the VR world, but you can sort of, you know, go between a pure virtual world, take the virtual objects out, but then have them in front of you in your room, in your office. You know, you could see the real world alongside that. So, you know, as technology progresses and things become, you know, cheaper and better and all that over time, you know, these experiences are just going to keep improving. You know, I actually have a pair of, you know, Facebook came out with these like Ray-Bans. So they're called Ray-Ban Stories, but it's basically, you know, a prototype for what augmented reality should be in the like further future. You know, they have cameras and speakers and a microphone, and you could talk with it and, you know, record your world. But you still can't see the digital things. You know, if there's like a 3D marker somewhere, you still need to, you know, pull out your phone to get that interface to be able to see it. But really, yeah, everything's converging. And I think on the previous topic of like ethics, not a lot of people talked about ethics of 2D screens when they were just becoming available. It was a practical tool that people needed. And I think that virtual reality to a lot of people is a practical tool that they all need, or a new avenue of escape, or tourism when you can't travel during the pandemic. But yeah, I saw a lot of discussion on the blockchain world, and so I'm a believer in people owning their own things, and really the only way that you could truly own your assets is through a blockchain-based system. So yeah, we'll see how that all merges, because of course we have multiple technologies coming out at the same time as we're trying to solve real world problems. So I think there's going to be a ton of overlap there.
I mean, just in terms of the tools, I mean, it's so interesting. The tools that you guys are building are amazing. I mean, it's just like, the idea of like, you can't understand that which you cannot see, right? I mean, it's just like, like the, fight for cancer research didn't really sort of heat up until the microscope was invented, that sort of thing. And then now you're taking that and like magnifying it, exponentially even more. So like
Microsoft or the microscope, it started out as a toy for rich people in their homes, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Like it wasn't originally made for science, and we're kind of seeing the same thing with VR.
Yeah, they were like, look at those little animals in there, they're so cute. And, so now we realize, I think they were just like E. coli or something, right? some dangerous, awful, pathogen. But yeah, so it's the same, with history too. It's like that's a totally different representation. It's like, how do you understand what you can't see? And so, just like being in the physicality of, people who are experiencing great things or very bad things. Humans are hardwired to remember physicality, remember sound, and to remember like the order in which things happened and like what people said. And so, that's what's so interesting about the potential for the metaverse. And if you don't mind, I'll just jump in and, because like we kind of forgot to show you what our app looks like.
Platform.
Our platform, yes, a few instructions like that. Just, I guess that's an interesting challenge for all of us, right? I mean, just being able to guide the user in the most seamless way possible to use this tool, whatever it is you're building. We're figuring out some of those things. Another thing that's really interesting too is like, if you're going to have people spend a lot of time in your metaverse, is like, is it beautiful enough? Like, is it respectful? Like we're dealing with historical characters, so it's like, we have a real mission to kind of preserve people respectfully, and it goes culturally, like from to get people to contribute to our platform. Like we'll go visit them, and there's kind of an exchange, and it's not like a Zoom call or a phone call in a lot of cases, and we have to go out and just sort of court them, for their participation. So there are those aspects of it as well. So really, the combination of the 360 cameras that are widely available, combination of drones, overlays, we're able to use photographs and audio and just like even 2D video, just being able to give users the ability to use all of those things and put them together in their own extended reality space is what we're doing. And so every activation is going to look super different, so there isn't really like a specific look to our metaverse. Like you could be, this is in the Choctaw Memorial in Oklahoma, so you could be there and then you would just get this overlay of the Choctaw soldiers who were, or the soldiers who fought, and you would just sort of get a sense of the code that they spoke to during World War I to sort of help advance the battlefield on the Western Front. It's an interesting story, and then you fast forward to here. So this is a story with Johnny Garcia, Patrick. This is what he was talking about earlier. So he tells the story of the Kumeyaay and how they, little known fact, this is where they spent their summers, and during the winters they would go back inland and sort of harvest and where it was warmer. But in the summers they came here, and like the activities, fishing and going out on boats and like collecting things for trade, and like this is very much defined as like quintessential California beach culture, right? La Jolla Shores. But it was used very differently, not that long ago. And so those are some of the stories that we really want to be able to tell. Just some cultural stories, that were passed down to us from some of the chiefs who we interviewed. So anyway, that's like a little tease.
That is wonderful. I'm glad you showed that, because very often with these technologies and these platforms, they're very much a show me, don't tell me, thing. We can try to describe them in words, but until we experience them, we go, oh, that is what it really is about. So thank you for sharing that. The next thing we want to talk about, because we talked about how these tools are going to be used, but for a lot of people in the audience, we wanted to talk about what are some of the careers and opportunities that are being created for people. How can people who are listening to this begin using some of this technology? Where can they find it? But also, what are some of the opportunities for people to maybe create on their own some of these things and become more involved or more educated on these platforms? Patrick, for instance, like what are you guys doing at the Clarke Center that might help people either engage or become? I know you're doing some upcoming talks and stuff on this.
Yeah, I think if I could give anyone just one piece of advice